Firstly, thank you for buying your soap making kit. I'm just going to do a demonstration here in what is the real Cosy Cottage of how to use everything in the kit and how to make yourself around 6 bars of soap, which should last you quite a few months or will enable you to give them out as presents to your friends and family. So this is what the kit looks like when it arrives, and if we just open it up, I'll take you through what's in here. So first off, there's a bottle of olive oil. So that is exactly the same sort of olive oil as you'd use for cooking or, just extra virgin olive oil. In here, we've got coconut oil. So this is refined coconut oil, which is why it's solid at room temperature. And refined just means it's been heated up and cooled down so that the structure of it changes a little bit. And then here, all of these bags are biodegradable bags, so we don't use non-biodegradable bags. And in this one, we've got some beeswax pellets. So these 3 are fats, oils, waxes, and the collective term for fats, oils and waxes is triglycerides, and you can actually make soap from any sort of triglyceride. So fats, oils, waxes, lanolin from sheep, some people make it using lard, but all of those sorts of things, sweet almond oil, all of those can be used to make soap. So let's just take a quick look at safety first off. So in this jar here, we've got sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is exactly the same as drain cleaner. So it's caustic soda. It's very caustic. You don't want to get it on your hands. So in your kit, you will have a pair of plastic gloves. And whenever we're working with the caustic soda, we need to be wearing the plastic gloves. You may also, these are safety glasses because I spend quite a lot of time working with soap. You may also want to wear some safety glasses, but definitely you don't want to be getting caustic soda in the same way as you wouldn't want to be getting drain cleaner anywhere near your face and eyes or on your skin. Okay, so let's make a start. So to make a start, we want all of the fats, oils and waxes in a bowl. So these have been carefully weighed out for you so that everything will combine together and will make soap. This is a fairly forgiving recipe that we've used for this. So these have all been weighed out and they are in exactly the right amounts to make the soap. So if we just pop all of this, it's important to get all the little bits into your bowl. And this bowl is fairly small. You might want to use a slightly larger bowl, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So there we are. Now what we now need to do as a first step is we need to melt the solids in here so that we're going to be able to combine everything together and make our soap. So let's just pop all of this over here. And the important thing is, this is meant to be fun. It's meant to be relaxing. So don't put yourself under pressure. Don't feel you've got to rush through the whole process. Another thing you're going to need, as well as your bowl, is a whisk. And this is just an ordinary kitchen whisk. And I've got a microwave here to do my melting. So I'm going to pop these in here. And I'm going to do the melting in there. You could do the melting over a double boiler, actually. So that would work just as well. So I'm going to give this initially a couple of minutes just to start to get everything going. Okay, hopefully you can still hear me over the sound of the microwave. And I'll just take you through what else I've got here. So this was the whisk that we talked about. This is your essential oil that came in your kit, and it's your essential oil that's going to fragrance your soap. So we don't use synthetic perfumes or anything like that at Cosy Cottage. So this is just essential oil. If you have a little smell, it's a lovely orangey flavour. So that is made of steam distilled zest of oranges, that one. Okay, and then this here in this jar is your caustic soda. So let's just work with the caustic soda first off. So being very, very careful not to get anything on our hands, we just pop the gloves on. There we are. And just empty all of the caustic soda out of your jar. So caustic soda likes to soak in water from the atmosphere. So you may find that a little bit has got a little bit stuck inside the jar. So something like the end of a spoon will help you to make sure that you get all of the little bits of caustic soda out of your jar. And you want it all in here because, as we say, everything has been pre-weighed to make sure that this very forgiving recipe works. Now, these have obviously got bits of caustic soda on them, so don't put them somewhere where you're going to put your hand on them. Think always about the safety aspect and put them well out of the way. Okay, so now you're going to need some water. Let's have a quick look at that now that it's done its 2 minutes. And what you can see is we're starting to get some good melting going on here. So I'm just going to pop this down. Okay, so what you'll notice is obviously the olive oil was already a liquid, so we don't need to melt that. The coconut oil is melting nicely, but the thing that requires more melting than the other two is the beeswax. Now, an ideal temperature for making this soap will be when the beeswax just melts into the liquids. So we're going to pop that back. And as I say, don't rush, don't put yourselves under any pressure. It's not a race. There we are. And I'm going to give this another 1 minute, I think. Okay, and then back to this. Okay, so to make your soap with your pre-weighed caustic soda, sodium hydroxide, they're just two different names for the same thing, you will need 120 millilitres of water. So just from a measuring jug, an ordinary kitchen measuring jug, get your 120 millilitres of water. Now when you pour your water into your caustic soda, you don't want to be splashing, and also you don't really want to be breathing it in. Very, very briefly, when you add the two together, there will be some fumes given off, and there'll be fumes which are to do with the things we put in our water in this country rather than anything to do with the caustic soda itself. But in the old days we never used to have these, and they were hard to get hold of, but most of us have got these now. And I'm just going to ask somebody over there to open the door briefly as well, because ventilation is good too at this stage. So 120 millilitres of water, and we add that to the caustic soda. Just do this gently. Soap making is a nice slow activity for us to relax into and enjoy. Good idea at this stage to, just with an ordinary spoon, give it a bit of a stir, and you probably find that it tends to adhere to the bottom. That's okay, it'll all dissolve soon, and you want it all dissolved. If you were to touch the edge of the bowl at this stage, you'll find that it's actually got very, very hot. So there is a bit of a reaction happening between the sodium hydroxide, the caustic soda, and the water. So this is definitely something we don't want on our skin. It'll burn our skin in two ways, both the caustic nature of the solution and also the heat. So let's just make absolutely certain that this is all dissolving nicely. So as I say, don't rush. Just give it a slow, gentle stir. And that's coming together nicely now. There we are. Okay, and remember, this has now got caustic soda on it, so we don't really want that touching anything. So pop it over here in a safe place with your other equipment that may have caustic soda on it. There we are. So let's have a quick look now at what's happening to our beeswax, coconut oil and olive oil. Now this is looking good. So that is absolutely perfect actually. So what's happened here is the coconut oil has all dissolved and the beeswax pellets are just at the point at which they will dissolve when I stir them with my balloon whisk. Just an ordinary kitchen balloon whisk. There we are. Fantastic. So now we have hot molten oils and waxes here. Just pop that shut. And we have hot dissolved caustic soda in water. So depends whether you're left-handed or right-handed, what way around you want to do this. I'm just going to swap those over. And then the next step is to add your caustic soda very, very carefully to your melted fats, oils and waxes, collective term triglycerides. So this is good. And then pop that well out of the way. And now comes the stirring and the waiting and the patience. So it's a good idea to give it a bit of a sort of lift as you stir it. So you want to stir fairly vigorously. And what you can see happening now, and you can take your mask off at this stage. You don't need that anymore. It's not going to make any nasty fumes. Oops, there we go. Caught on my earrings. There we are. There we are. Pop that out of the way. There, so what you can see happening here is what was clear liquid, or pretty clear liquid, and clear molten oils, waxes and fats are becoming cloudy. So what is happening in this bowl is the sodium hydroxide, or the caustic soda, is reacting with the triglycerides, the fats, oils and waxes, and it's making soap. So it's the combination of the sodium bit of the sodium hydroxide and the long carbon chains in the triglycerides that are reacting together and making something new. And that something new is white and it's solid and it's forming a bit of a suspension in here. And that's why this is all becoming quite cloudy and and starting to become thick. So this process that you go into now, it can take up to half an hour. So if you keep it moving, you keep it, moving around, what you're doing here is you're making sure that the soap that you're making isn't just falling down to the bottom. Because what you want is for your soap to be forming throughout the whole mixture, and then you're going to get a nice uniform bit of solid at the end of the day that you're going to be able to cut up. So if your hand starts to ache, you can give this little rests. So you can. Some people do 10 minutes and then a bit of a rest, and then 10 minutes and a bit of a rest, and you may find that it goes quite quickly. It just depends on the day, how hot the atmosphere is, how hot everything was when you took it out of the microwave, or indeed from over your double boiler. But it's just a bit of a meditative process now. Quite important still that you don't splash this on your skin. Pets, children, you want everybody well out of the way. And what will happen, and I promise you it will happen, is that this will start to go thick. And what you're looking for is you're looking for the point at which the mixture changes from a liquid, which is where it started, to something that's like sort of fairly thick custard. And that is called, in soap making, it's called the point of trace. And a lot of people will say that you can see the trace of your whisk across the top of it. And you can, it sort of leaves lines behind. But the more you do, you sort of get a bit of a feel for it, and you get a feel for when it's going to happen. So we're sort of in a bit of a half an hour process now. So we're just mixing. And if you want, you can take 10-minute mixes and then a couple of minutes break. Don't splash it all over yourself. You may be wondering when we put the lovely smelly essential oil in. That's something that we need to do right at the end of the process. So when this reaches that elusive point of trace, that's the point at which we will put the fragrance in. And one of the most common mistakes is to get so excited that you reach the point of trace and so keen to actually get your soap into its mould, which also comes in your kit, that you forget altogether to put your fragrance in. So that's something to be careful about, because you'll find you have a beautiful load of soap in here and an unopened fragrance bottle left behind. That's one of the most common mistakes, and we make that mistake in our workshop where we make thousands of bars of soap every day. And we do it just like this. We do it exactly the same as you're doing it at home, exactly the same as I'm doing it here now. We just use very much bigger bowls and very much bigger quantities of everything. So if you can just take a look at that, what you'll be able to see is it's all starting to become thicker. It certainly isn't thick custard yet, but it's coming to the thin custard stage, I'd say, having gone through gravy. And also, the more we do this and the more white solid is formed, the lighter the colour becomes and the more opaque the mixture becomes. So if, unlike me, you are not used to doing this for a long period of time, don't worry too much if you need to take a little rest, provided you get your whisking going again afterwards. And in fact, sometimes when you've done this lots and lots of times, you may find that giving it a little rest is actually helpful to the process. Okay, so I'm going to give this a tiny rest now. And again, remember, put this down somewhere where you're not going to forget that you've got caustic mixture that could hurt your hands if you put your hand down on it. So I'm just going to pop this over here because that's where I've popped it before. So we've got our mould ready for when we reach that point of trace. We've got our essential oil ready for when we reach the point of trace. And what we're going to do is we're going to reach the point of trace, the thick custard stage, when we can see the trace of the beater in the surface of the soap. We're going to put in our fragrance, give it a good mix round so that it's all homogeneous, and then we're going to tip it all into there. And probably what we will want to use is something to scrape it out. So I've got another spoon here. Okay, and then what we're going to do after that is we're going to leave it in this disposable mould here, and we're going to leave it for 24 hours. And in that 24 hours it will set, and by tomorrow, 24 hours later, it'll be like hard cheddar cheese. And then what we can do, we can dip it out of here. It'll come out fairly easily, but you can disassemble this if you want to. Put it on a chopping board tomorrow with a very sharp knife. Cut it into slices or cubes. You may want to make your soap in cubes. And then put those on a rack somewhere to dry. You don't want it in a freezing cold place, but somewhere at room temperature, and that'll dry. So we're going back to this now, and you can see this is really starting to get a lot thicker. And you can also tell that the colour is becoming lighter. If you can see, it's starting to climb up the sides of the bowl. As I say, this is a very forgiving recipe, so we have very, very few failures with this recipe. And you can also see on here, you're starting to get little bits of soap here. That's soap forming there. And I would say this is now at what we would call a light trace. So you don't want it too sloppy, or you'll find that the soap will fall to the bottom and you'll get a load of clag at the bottom and oil on the top. But you also don't want it so thick that you can't get it out of the bowl and into your mould. So it's a bit of a judgment you're making, looking for the point of trace, but good signs are soap climbing up the sides of the bowl here, soap starting to form on your whisk, and a definite thickness forming in here in the bowl. So you can probably see, we are starting to see traces of the whisk in the top of here, and I'm thinking this is nearly there. You can see some nice soap starting to form on the side of that bowl. Still all fairly hot at this stage and still fairly caustic. So the caustic nature of the mixture, tomorrow when it's fully set, it will still be a bit caustic. So why not save your gloves and use those when you're doing the cutting up process tomorrow. Then pick up your bars, pop them on your drying rack, and then in 2 weeks' time your soap will be ready to use. It won't be caustic then. The caustic characteristics will wear off after a few days, and it'll be lovely gentle soap with no SLS or detergents or any skin drying chemicals in it. So I think we're at the point now where I would say this is custard. There's the essential oil. This has all been measured out for you. There we are. So we want to mix that in well. It has a little bit of a tendency to go into swirls and separate, so give it a really good mix. And you don't want to do this at the beginning because this would have interfered in the early stages with the reaction that's making the soap. So it's important to wait until a bit later on. There we go, and that's point of trace, thick custard. Lots of evidence of soap being formed on the bowl and on the whisk. Pop that down there and we're ready in a nice confident movement to pop that into our bowl. And if you would like to, you can then scrape the surplus in. Okay, and you can see on the bowl there, that's starting to solidify. So it's all fairly solid there. You may want to do this even. Don't do it if you have a hole in your glove, because that'll be quite painful. There we are. Okay. Lovely. So we'll leave that there now, and that will set. Leave it still for an hour or two. And then leave it 24 hours until tomorrow. And then tomorrow, 24 hours after it's made, it will be at the hard cheddar cheese stage. Turn it out of its mould on a rack or on a chopping board with a very sharp knife and a very assertive action. Cut it into bars, pop the bars on a rack to dry, keep it somewhere at room temperature for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks your soap will be ready to use. Thank you.